Hi, and welcome to this week's podcast, or if you're watching us on YouTube. Now, I don't know about you, but I spend quite a bit of my time looking at data and insights to understand how I can then make decisions and look at trends going on in the market. Now, probably much like you, towards the end of January, it isn't just my birthday, but it is also when the digital report from Hootsuite and We Are Social come out. And many of us are scrambling to have a look and wade through 300 pages of amazing insight. But all of that is put together by the fantastic Simon from Kepios, who is a very clever man, is a data geek, and we could talk to him all week. And I'm really delighted that he has been keen to come back again this year. We spoke to him last year, and he's come back for another round to chat to us this year about interpreting some of that data. And in particular, something I want to dive into is e-commerce. So, Simon, it's lovely to have you here. Delighted. I can't believe it's been a year since we chatted last time.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? Thanks for having me back. I'm very excited about nerding out with you on data again. So great
Well,
stuff.
what better to do on a Friday in terms of nerding out? I know you've got a thunderstorm and I have a man cutting my hedge. So we have lots of authentic sound going on in the
Tremendous.
background as well, but just shows we're human. So,
Oh, good.
I had a wade through your figures, and I'm a total data geek, and I could spend all year in there going, oh, well, this could happen and that could happen. But I think some area I would like to focus on this year is around e-commerce because
Yeah,
many of us are in lockdown, not in lockdown, subject to where you are in the world. It's had a huge impact on that sector, hasn't it? I know,
yeah,
there's stats around the last 10 years. Well, the last 2 years have basically been fast tracked of what would normally be 10 years in that ecosystem.
yeah,
And some stats that I just wanted to just highlight that was around the food and the home care. Food care, or the food purchase market has increased by, I think, 38%. And the home care has increased by 21. Well, there's no
yeah,
rocket science there, really, is there, Simon? Because if we look at our own shoes, we've all had to purchase online. But I'd love to
yeah.
know a little bit of nitty gritty around that. And I know you've got some very intriguing stats to share with us. So let's go down that rabbit hole and explore that. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. So it is interesting to see what has changed since COVID. So we're now, it's fully 2 years since lockdowns properly kicked in around the world. And a lot has evolved even within those 2 years, but especially compared to before COVID started. If you start looking at what has changed in the world of e-commerce, there's a lot of interesting development. So I think that the most important thing that we took away, and I think we might have touched on this last year, but in any case, in last year's data, we did see that actually the percentage of internet users who are shopping online didn't increase as much as perhaps one might expect to have seen given COVID. But that was mainly because most internet users at that time already bought things online. So we were already looking at 75 to 80% of people already buying something online every month. Back in those days, for some reason, it was
Yeah.
purchases every month. We've now moved to purchases every week, which makes it a little bit annoying for anybody looking at the data in the reports to compare. Sorry, that was beyond my control. But I think that the new version, so the weekly stuff, is actually even more interesting, especially when we look at grocery. So yeah, what was interesting about that data was you had already a lot of people that were buying online, but a lot of that, especially when you looked at slightly older age groups, they were buying electronics once a year. They weren't necessarily making huge numbers of frequent purchases, but they were purchasing quite a lot of high ticket items. That's where the big changes have happened over the past 2 years. So you've suddenly seen this surge, if you like, in the number of categories that people are willing to buy online. Food and groceries is the big one. I think that's probably not a surprise. It was one of those areas where a lot of people resisted
Yeah.
before COVID. There was a lot of people saying, "I want to be able to touch my vegetables before I buy them." Yeah, totally relate to that. And especially, I think fruit and veg was one that in this household where I live, we were the same. It's like, no, we want to go out and buy our fruit and veg. And then obviously when COVID came along, it's like, do you know what? No, I just wanted to come without anybody having touched it, let alone me. So that I think was a big driver. The personal care and the home care products, I think a lot of that is now, whether it is everyday, kitchen cleaner right the way through to luxury beauty products, weirdly within a similar category. a lot of people are embracing different ways of researching, learning about that, and then buying it. So it's not just the transaction phase, it's also right the way back through the purchase journey. We've seen a lot of that evolve too. So yeah, there is one other stat on the grocery that I wanted to just bring to your attention now. But just before I get to that, do you have any questions on what I've said so far? Otherwise, I'll talk all day.
Not so much questions, but I guess observations. So obviously, we both sit in the camp where we work with large organizations. I know you do digital briefings and keynotes and stuff like that and data research. I sit in the camp of doing me and my amazing team do digital marketing and commerce for big FMCG brands across the world, and also upskilling and just touching on the skincare, household stuff, FMCG
Yeah.
as a whole. We've been doing a lot of upskilling in that space. And I think the last point you made is very interesting, because the bigger brands struggle potentially, from what, in my view, for that earlier journey. They're focused on, if someone wants to buy, I won't name any names, but if someone wants to buy a certain brand of moisturizer, then they will buy it. But how are they investigating and how are they finding that? And the biggest
Yeah.
challenges I've seen and continue to see, which is why I'm upskilling them and we're upskilling them and helping them in that journey, is many of those brands have never sold direct to consumer. So although they might be
Yeah.
the biggest brands in the world, they don't actually know who their consumer is. If you said, actually, who buys your moisturizer and what else do they buy? They would go, I don't know. In fact, they've told me after my training, they've gone, I don't actually know who our consumer is. So how can they then understand that journey earlier on? And we've been
Yeah.
doing lots of work with that to help them, because it's a real minefield. First of all, they have to de-silo their organization and don't just sit in e-commerce camp. But secondly, they have to really understand their consumer and work in a way of not just relying on retailers or supermarkets or whatever, who are sometimes sharing data, sometimes not, and building
Uh-huh.
almost this direct relationship, even if they don't sell to that consumer. And also, especially in the skincare, creative and interactive ways, because yeah, I want to go and, have a feel of, my pears or my broccoli or stuff before I purchase it. But when it comes to skincare, oh my goodness, I want to touch it, feel it. So they've had to get very innovative in creating, AI systems and online advisors and things like that. So it's very fascinating. We could spend a week just talking about that.
Absolutely. That journey, and so I think we will definitely dive into that one. I'll give you one last bit on grocery, and then let's go and have a look at FMCG and especially the DTC side of stuff, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions in that space, and there's lots of opportunities that are being misunderstood. But the one that I just saw, so this is not in our report yet, so I'm already working on our April reports, which will be out 21st of April. And one of the stats that I was looking at this week, for those of you who follow Scott Galloway and his predictions and provocations. So Prof Galloway on Twitter, I'm sure you've come across him. He does a whole bunch of different things. But one of the things he was looking at this week was the sort of the rise of use of e-commerce in the United States specifically. And it has this fascinating chart where it suddenly accelerates for the past few quarters over COVID, but then it slows down and it actually goes back to the trajectory that it was on prior to COVID. And a lot of people were interpreting this to mean that, e-commerce and especially groceries online have lost momentum, they're no longer big. But when you look at the curve as it was going up prior to COVID, it was already pretty impressive how, we were getting to that inflection point. We accelerated through that. And I think, you've got this sudden, like you said, this 5 to 10 year acceleration jump forward in terms of what we might have seen in growth previously, but that's then slowed down. What I think we're seeing is we're going to have a heartbeat chart. So it goes up, then it goes down, and then it goes back again. And I suspect it's going to go back higher. So much as I think in the last couple of quarters we've seen things slow down, I think a big part of that is people being able to go back to physical stores, having not been able to do over the past couple of years, really. Ironically, there's a novelty to going to the supermarket, which makes it fun for a while before you kind of go, do you know what? It was a pain to drive out or to have to carry home heavy bags or whatever it is that your experience of grocery shopping is. So be very careful when interpreting charts like that. I think there's a lot of people with vested interests trying to tell you what these things do. I personally don't have any vested interests. What I really want to do is understand what people are actually doing, because either side of the story, as far as I'm concerned, is interesting. Which leads us neatly, segue, into what are those people doing when it comes to buying all sorts of different products. So you mentioned DTC, direct to consumer. Give me a little bit of a perspective on your take on where you feel the clients you talk to have got to in that journey. So a lot of them, when COVID came along, panicked because they were thinking, oh my goodness, suddenly we have to do something we've talked about in strategy meetings and avoided for the longest. It's a bit like, the human, so the business equivalent of exercise at New Year. It's like, I'm going to exercise, I'm going to join the gym, and then you suddenly realize you have to do it. So brands got there. Tell me a bit about the experience you've had with your clients in DTC.
So I've worked with a lot of the world's largest brands over the last 12, 24 months, and many of them, they own skincare, health, food, all sorts of the things you have in your house every day. Most of them haven't gone D2C. One of them went D2C. One of the food areas went D2C. Majority of them didn't. Majority of them, well, first of all, just rewind a bit. They all started to panic. They were all like, oh my goodness, e-commerce and online actually is really important. And how can we influence that? Because they were seeing that some retailers were not necessarily putting their products online. So they might be in the store, but they weren't online. They were like, oh my goodness, we haven't really paid attention to marketplaces like Amazon or some of the other ones. So first they were like, oh my goodness, we need to sort that out. They didn't have the skills in-house and they needed upskilling. So that's where we started the conversations. But what they then did is, or what we helped them to do, is focus on actually getting those products found, so A+ content, and thinking about the journey of that. But also at the same time, getting them to think about the importance of their website, start to collect first-party data so they could then be part of that journey, even though it's not D2C. So like I said, only one of all of those brands I've worked with have now gone D2C. The rest of them have gone, we don't really want to be in this D2C space for various reasons, and whether I agree with that is another thing. For most of it, I do agree that that's perhaps not where to prioritize, because there are so many things for them to do. So prioritize on actually where can we get to the people that are already there, but actually be found and understand who they are and get sold in that market. So that's generally how it's gone. The one that has gone D2C as well as other markets is experimenting. I know they have lots of challenges, and actually some of my colleagues bought some of their products from their D2C experience, and the products turned up squashed, battered. So obviously they're having to learn all of that very quickly, which, could they prevent that? Is that then leaving a good experience? So that's my bird's eye view, without mentioning any names of the brands that have gone into that space.
Yeah, so the bit that fascinates me here is, I think that they all thought that they had to do this, and so they've gone through the learning curve very rapidly. I don't think any of them are going to regret having gone through that, but I think, like you said, many of them are going to realize that this isn't the optimum opportunity, or it's certainly not going to be the lion's share of their sales. If you look at the really big FMCGs out there, so the Unilevers and the P&Gs, realistically, for them to offer a D2C package, the only real way, in my mind, and this is my personal opinion rather than it being a heavily researched strategic piece of work, it feels like unless they were going to do massive bundles of lots and lots of different parts of their brands, the incentive for somebody to go and buy individual items from that website and have them shipped, and the costs involved in the hassle, compared to going to an online supermarket and getting my week's groceries in one go, where ideally, still haven't quite seen this perfectly implemented yet, but I buy 80% of the same products every week, and I'm just going to go add them all to my cart, or even just have them on subscription because I know I'm going to buy them anyway, and just get it delivered. The convenience is such a big part of the online shopping experience, especially when it comes to grocery, that this idea that you're going to go and buy the 40, 50 different items that you buy every week from individual, it's not going to happen. Sorry to burst bubbles. That doesn't mean D2C isn't a discipline that all of these companies should be exploring. And to be honest, if you can get them direct, then by all means go for it, because then you own that relationship and the possibilities to learn and to build that sort of understanding away from these frustratingly generic personas that we used to build. In the marketing world, where you've got Jenny is 24 and lives in, and you're just like, oh my goodness, somebody, usually a fairly young strategist, has sat down and written this with a little bit of research, admittedly, but a lot of it is fantasy, and it's like writing stories when we were younger. And I don't mean that in any way judgmentally. How can you possibly distill thousands and thousands of consumers into one or two persona? It's not the optimum way of doing this. And the irony is that the data, if you were an Amazon or if you were a large supermarket, the data that you would have from both your online activities, but also things like, in the UK, you've got things like the Nectar card. In the US, you've got things like all these loyalty programs that would be a company like Whole Foods or whatever else. In my mind, that was the reason why Amazon bought Whole Foods. It was nothing to do with they desperately wanted a physical footprint, although that was a massive bonus. It was all of the data of how people shop in physical world and how does then that compare to the online world and what can we learn. That data was hugely valuable. So yeah, I think the D2C bit, I kind of feel like the conversations that I've had with a lot of our clients have been very, very focused on that checkout bit. And I think this is the bit that perhaps a lot of companies are missing the opportunity. The real D2C bit is, it's the entire experience. It's the whole journey. How can we learn about how our audiences and our consumers shop? How do they learn about products in the first place? How do they make decisions? Who do they discuss them with? How messy is the messy middle, as Google likes to call it? So it's backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And I think it's that bit that I get most excited about. There's so much that we can now do and learn about our consumers firsthand without needing this creepy third-party data that is disappearing anyway. All these cookies are going to vanish at the end of next year. We still firsthand have the opportunity to learn, and I think that so much in the data is pointing to the fact that the journey is online even if the purchase isn't.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think I think that the opportunities for brands is, the earlier part of that journey, engaging with them, understanding, getting first party data so they can then, understand their consumers even more. Obviously, they'll get the data from the Amazons and the Whole Foods who are charging for some of that data. Obviously, it's it's an opportunity
to. And quite rightly so.
Yeah, quite rightly so. And then, the loyalty, the advocacy bit at the end. Maybelline, as an example, tapped into this 2 years ago. I think it was like November 2021. They didn't want to go D2C, but they created this loyalty program, which meant it then encouraged the person who purchased, the mascara or the lip gloss onto their website to share insights, to be part of that ecosystem, because then they can understand the challenges that person has that maybe the Amazon might not have asked, or the Sephora might not have asked. And then they can because they can only market, because of the cookieless world, with first party data. So they don't need to worry about like you say, the add to cart bit. It's the bit before and the after that I think the real opportunity is for them to engage, garner first party data and be part of that ecosystem. But the point you made earlier about Unilever, they're buying digital native brands. I mean, Unilever bought Vegetarian Butcher a number of years ago. It's a vegan space, vegetarian space. They have really good, strong brand personality. They have good, strong first party data. They don't sell direct to consumer, but it then helps them to grow that. And anyone that follows Vegetarian Butcher will know they're now in with KFC and all sorts of weird and wonderful brands, and really really pushing that brand out there.
Same with Dollar Shave Club. I think when you look at was that a purchase to enable a sales channel versus was it an acquisition to learn about the audience and how they shop and all that kind of stuff? I think it's probably a little bit of both, but it's more the second one. But just, you reminded me, so I'm gonna dig in some of the data in the report. So for those who like to reference charts, if you look at our global overview of 2022 report, slide 263, we've got sources of brand discovery. Now, search engines, for those people who are online, search engines are the number one way that people learn about brands today, which I still find quite interesting, because a lot of people out there talking about the fact that the search engine is dead, and I know we're going to come on to talk about search in more detail a little bit later today, but search engines are still incredibly valuable. How they fit in the overall sort of purchase journey is evolving, and how people search is evolving too. Ads on TV, number two. Then you've got word of mouth, but word of mouth increasingly is facilitated by messenger apps and whatever else. And then we've got ads on social media. So you've still got this mix of conventional channels like TV. You've got the old school word of mouth, which has been around forever, obviously, ever since humans were. And then you've got the more digital kind of stuff in there. And I think this is the bit that, depending on how you get your information as a marketer or as an agency, you're going to get an awful lot of distractions, shall I say. So there's a lot of either misinformation out there, or it's very selective reporting of individual stats that support either clickbait or a particular point of view. I think it's never been more important, now that we've got this sort of hybrid coming out of lockdown, going back into the physical world, but still doing a lot of stuff online. It's never been more important to have a genuine marketing mix. I think this is a bit that a lot of times especially because you and I working a lot in the digital world, our clients coming to us and asking us very clear questions about the digital thing and forgetting that they need to work in harmony. So how does my social media activity influence in-store activity down at the supermarket or even at a small retailer, whatever else? So I think it's that bit where you have the opportunity to get first party data from anybody, whether it's your own, whether it's from Amazon, whether it's from Nectar cards and similar. Get that data, pay for it if you need to, but make sure that you're making use of it, because the insights that we can now glean from that, provided you're not just collecting the data for its own sake, is so much richer than any persona we could ever create by hypothesizing.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get off my ivory tower there, but
yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. We very much focus on the omni-channel journey of online and offline, and I know you talked about word of mouth. This influence, isn't it? People go, oh, it's a trendy word, influencer now, but you're an influencer, Simon. So am I, to our family, friends, any connections. But there's this trendy word around it. And an example I often use in my training, and I posted about it on LinkedIn a couple of months ago, is Amazon. People think, oh, Amazon's, a digital organization, but they have physical stores. And I got a flyer through the post that was addressed to me, and it was about, have you tried Amazon Wardrobe? And that I posted it on LinkedIn because I was like, look, just because it's a digital brand doesn't mean that you just have to do digital marketing. This product has been around since I think 2018. How many people have used digital wardrobe? They have to drive brand awareness through an omni-channel approach, not just a digital approach. So hopefully that nailed it home to a few people. If Amazon is doing digital marketing, then the rest of us should focus on, but obviously that came from first party data, is first party data online and offline and that omni-channel journey.
Yeah, and I think another fascinating thing about when you look at how Amazon approaches that marketing mix is that they do so much testing. So they're famous for doing testing on their homepage of the website, but they test everything else too. Every one of those links, so if it's got a URL for you to go and check out, it will probably have a clever way of tracking that it came from a DM and whatever else. Every brand that has at least the basic resources available to them should be making sure that they're trying different things out as much as possible. It seems crazy to me that we have the resources available to us as an industry now that allow us to learn which of our marketing dollars is working harder, and yet we're still squandering a lot of those opportunities by just being generic about what we're doing. I appreciate for a lot of smaller brands it's incredibly hard to do all the things you should do, but once you get to medium and larger size enterprises, there are not really any excuses given how much we're spending now. So if you're a bigger marketer and you're investing more than $10,000 or $15,000 in media in a year, which is going to be pretty much most brands at that point. Yeah, I mean, the amount of money that goes into that versus the amount of money it's going to cost you to do a simple A/B test of this versus that, you need to be doing that. If you're not, you're wasting money.
I think a lot of organizations, and I hear that a lot from a lot of the organizations I've been working with the last 2 years, they have more pressure on them. These people that are in charge of those budgets have more pressure on them than ever before to come on, we need to grow our category. So they tend to default to, well, this worked last time, so let's do it again, rather than go, well, let's test and learn. And the other thing they tend to default to is campaign-led rather than what I would call always on. Search engines is still relatively new to big brands. I've worked with big brands you have in your bathroom today and have, things in your kitchen, and they're not using search engines. They are defaulting to paid media only. And obviously that then links to the problem of first party data. So I'm like, and earlier on in that journey, they're like, well, people would search for our product. Yeah, but how are you going to grow your category? The biggest way to grow your category is to get people that aren't buying your product at the moment to buy it. So how can you disrupt that journey? You can disrupt it with omnichannel marketing. You can disrupt it with always on, with A/B testing to then, because it's always on, then guess what? When someone's searching, they will find you. And then first party data. So it's really fascinating to see how the data that you're sharing and what I'm seeing is, just trying to join those dots from a takeaway point for a brand's perspective. So hopefully, lots of strategic points for brands to take away so far, or strategic thinking backed up with data, which is always good.
Yeah. So on the search one, and I think this is going to segue into our second sort of topic today, but I think on that one, I think a lot of the marketers that I speak to, when they think of search, and especially if they think of Google search AdWords, they're kind of thinking, somebody's going to type in a brand name because they don't know enough about the brand. In reality, for a lot of established brands, you're still going to be seeing a lot of searches for where can I get a discount, where is it cheaper for me to buy. So I have decided on a brand, but which merchant is going to give me. So A prime example, I eat a significant quantity of dairy milk, Cadbury chocolate
Oh,
brand. I am obsessed with it, I confess. And we've got a retailer in Singapore, which is an online retailer. In fact, I'm going to name names. So Lazada, they have regular sales. Every month they've got these fantastic sort of discount sales and whatever else. And at the moment, Mondelez is running a special, buy lots of chocolate, get discount kind of thing. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, that sounds like a really good deal. But let me do my homework before I spend, we're talking probably easily $100 worth of chocolate.
oh my goodness, a fellow chocoholic.
I like to have a supply just in case there's like out of stocks moments. Let me just double check before I drop that much money that other retailers aren't selling it cheaper. So that, in my mind, it's that kind of behavior that I think a lot of, especially brand marketers, forget. In my mind, if I'm searching for dairy milk, I'm not going to go to the website. I really don't need any more convincing to buy more chocolate. I'm done. You've hit that nail on the head already. But by all means, I want to bargain. Maybe there's different formats. I'm not a big fan of the kilo bars because I tend to eat the whole thing at once. But, should I get this bar? Should I get those kinds of searches? I think there is an incredible amount of insight that we can learn about our audiences, whether it's chocolate or buying a bicycle or you name it. The stuff that we can learn even later in the purchase cycle through the search habits. Don't discount that. Don't think that your budget is all about drive to website to tell them about the wonderful ingredients in your product. A lot of it, in fact, teaming up and spending money on a platform like Amazon so that when somebody searches for it, you are there prime top and center, making sure that people feel like they're getting the best deal. That speaks a lot to the opportunities that I think some brands have missed out on. Once they went into DDC, they went back an awful lot to just driving general website traffic to try and get back to very basics. And I think there's been a distraction in there. So, yeah, when you think of search, it's not just about learning the first time. There's a lot more to it than just discovery too. I know that sounds obvious, but the conversations I have with a lot of my clients, I'm like, ooh, maybe just a reminder on this. It's every step.
Yeah, absolutely, and I've got an example of that as well. Just to, obviously it's just two people here today, but I'm going on a trek in Nepal in September, so I'm trying to kit all my stuff out, slightly different stuff to what I need in flat Norfolk. So I'm after walking leggings. So I carried out lots of research, and I found these walking leggings, Montane Therm Pro something or other, and they were on sale. I think they're like £80 full price. I found them for £60 on a website, a very good website, very knowledgeable. I was like, yep, I'll buy them. Bought them. Went for a test drive with my bike. Loved them. Went for 20 miles. It was wet. It was windy. It was lovely and warm. Went to my mom's for a cup of tea. She's like, oh, they're nice. I was like, yeah, they are. I was like, and actually, they're £60 at the moment, £20 off. So she's like, oh, I'm going to get some as well. So we both independently went back to the same website that I'd recommended. And then, like you, I was like, oh, I wonder if they are the cheapest. And then I did a Google search. Snow and Rock had them for £40. And I was like,
damn.
Oh, that's a big difference. So when my mum, have you purchased them? Yeah, they arrived tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I've just found them for 40 quid. And the other company had free returns. So I was like, right, okay, we'll return them and I'll buy 2 pairs on here. So, if it's such a big saving, even like you say, even at cart phrase, I'm not saying I do that all the time. I am generally loyal to brands, but when there's that much saving, when I'm going to be spending considerable amount of money, I will do that. So it just shows that, again, in search, if you're there, you're the cheapest, you're available, people will do that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening. I think people are realizing that there is a balance between convenience, where, in all honesty, fighting over 3 pence difference between this milk and that milk and these different merchants. Okay, do you know what? If it arrives at the time slot that I want it to, then that is actually worth paying a little bit more for. But when you're saying, if it's one-off purchase for one kind of brand and it's a new category that you're spending a lot of time thinking about, you want to know that you've got a bargain. And one of the things that I find most fascinating is that this is not in any way unique to people that are trying to balance their budgets. So even the incredibly rich love a bargain. And I think a lot of brands underestimate the value of that. Even if you're looking at whether it is a discount or whether it's special treatment, the greatest irony, we've been dealing a bit with a finance brand, and it turns out that the richer you are, the more likely you are to get deals, which I find a little bit, part of me feels uncomfortable about that. But it is ironic that even when you are, we're talking about high net worth, so the millionaires of the world and above, the discounts that they want to earn. You know, they're counting percentage points of difference here, and it's maybe that's one of the reasons why they end up rich, or maybe they're just, you know, it's a human thing we can't escape. So don't think this is just for, you know, you may associate deep discounting with, you know, your super discounts like Lidl and Aldi and stuff like that, but it's equally relevant at the other end. I may go, I'm going to use my UK references here, I may go to Waitrose, but if it's on special offer at Waitrose, that's just as compelling for a Waitrose shopper to be doing that. So, sorry, I'll get off my high horse again on that.
They want to feel like they've got a deal, don't they? So it doesn't matter
Right.
how affluent you are, you want to feel like you've got a good deal, and then you're probably more likely to tell people about it. Oh, you know, I got this thing on offer in Waitrose, or, you know, Whole Foods in London, or, you know, big affluent purchases in other parts of the world. So I think it is that human impact as well. And something I was reading the other day is it's still availability. You know, people want to know if it's available in store or online. So even if they are searching online, I want to know actually if I'm about to go down to a retailer, is it in stock? Because I don't want that journey wasted. So a lot of the things you're
Totally.
sharing, like just going back to that, you know, that heartbeat thing, which I know we're going back off topic a little bit, but again, I shared an article on LinkedIn this week, and I was like, people have, you know, that novelty factor of actually I can go into the supermarket, having done my online shopping for the last year, and it's a bit of a novel factor. And then I take my 4-year-old with me, and I'm like, no, that novel factor's over. I'm going back to shopping online. But it's just a bit of a different scene, isn't it? You know, the fact we can go out in some countries, it is that, well, I'm going to go and do it. But then there's other things like, you know, fuel costs and all sorts of other things that will then go, actually, it is convenient to do it that way. And then it will find its balance eventually, I think, won't it?
Yeah, but I think I don't envisage any situation where people are going to, especially when it comes to grocery, where they are 100% only online. There's going to be days when you're on your way home from work and you need an ingredient. And I think one of the bits that's still really distinctly missing in the online shopping experience is serendipity. You've got all these great engines that give you, people like you also bought X, or this is on special offer or whatever, but nothing quite beats, especially if you're a very sad, nerdy person like me, and you go to a new city, whether it's for work or for pleasure, and you want to go into a supermarket and just look around. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I love going to Italy and going into these little like supermarkets, like the little small town supermarkets in, you know, hill villages across Italy, and you're just like walking like, wow, all these brands that I've never heard of, and you just, I want to try them all. And I think, you know, in an online world, it's just not the same. It's not this sort of feeling of being surrounded by all these
No.
exciting new experiences. So I think, interestingly though, there is one online merchant that has introduced that in a way that I am very excited about, in a very odd way. So if you are this kind of old school person like me, still likes to buy music as opposed to just streaming everything. So I spend, after chocolate, I spend an inordinate amount of money on buying music because I love to support. I used to be a DJ back in an old life, and I still love finding new artists, supporting them, all that kind of stuff. So bandcamp.com, as in, yes, this one time at Bandcamp. But Bandcamp has this perfect sort of experience for the music lover. So if you're the sort of person who used to love to go digging crates in either, you know, new or secondhand record shops, they've got this feed. So if you imagine your Facebook feed, but instead of it being people posting news and here's me out to lunch, it's here's what these labels have released, but most importantly, here's what other people that you follow are buying. So Bandcamp is this, you know, you can follow labels, you can follow artists, but you can follow other shoppers. So if you're like me and you're always looking out for really obscure new music, I found a couple of people that have bought other obscure things like me, and then I can go in and look at their entire collection. But I can also be notified when they're buying something new. So my feed every Saturday morning, when I'm not deep in report production, of course, I'm going in and I'm looking at, you know, this guy in, actually just today, folks in the Ukraine. I thought it was fascinating. You know, there's a war waging there and all the terrible things, but there's folks in Ukraine. God forbid where they're doing it from. You know, I have this vision of these guys in there, sort of, you know, in the metro in Kiev. They've still
Yeah.
got internet, fortunately. Spending money on music to keep, you know, to tide them through the
Help
experience of
them
that.
through,
So,
yeah.
but you know, that whole idea of serendipity within e-commerce, I think, you know, we're going to talk. I
Absolutely.
keep
I
on
think
alluding to things
yeah,
we're going to talk about later, but social commerce,
yeah.
that bit for me, that's the bit of the journey that's missing. A lot of brands are getting excited about social commerce as I can buy things in Instagram. That's exciting, but that whole serendipity bit is what I get really excited about when we come to social commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. I think absolutely it's a big part that's missing. And I think brands struggle for that because obviously, you know, like I'm like you, whenever I go to a new country, I'm like, oh, let's go have a look at the supermarket because it gives you a good idea of what they're eating and like fresh pasta in big balls in Italy and stuff like that. And it is missing because the online world is just very filtered. They drive bargains, but not necessarily relevant to me, not necessarily local, not very inspirational. And even in like the outdoor clothing camp that I'm very much in at the moment, it's just you have to know. And I got really frustrated in the end. So I then went to an in-store organization that could give me inspiration, could help me with that serendipity moment, because I just got so frustrated online if I wanted inspiration, but I didn't know what I wanted, and just really frustrated with that thing. So I'm not a music fan. I'm a chocoholic fan. But I'm not really a music fan, but I am going to go and have a look at Bandcamp just to see that experience, because I think there's a lot organizations can learn from that. So thank you for sharing your human experience and your data as well, because I think that's really useful.
So, and to be honest, even if you're not a music fan, go and check it out, because I think there's a lot of other categories that could benefit from this. You will kind of need to have somebody building the equivalent for your industry, but I can totally see the Bandcamp model working in fashion. So in you've got the Etsy model of small creators creating these lovely little individual pieces of style. The ability to follow an influencer and see what they're purchasing when it comes to small accessories, bags, shoes, you name it, that model would kill it in fashion. Absolutely brilliant. So one day I'll build one of these things rather than giving the ideas away. But that, in my mind, it feels like there's so much to learn from when it's not just about the most efficient driver. And I think this is what, I have a huge amount of respect for Amazon, but what's making their business really successful is the efficiency of it. Every single cent that they can save, they're saving somewhere, and every dollar they can make out of the brands and whatever else, they're making that too. So it's like almost like the stock market, it's the arbitrage between buy and sell, right? But I think there's other models out there as well. People are always going to look for bargains, absolutely, but where you get beyond the generic brand, so brands that you can buy in multiple different retailers, where you've got an experience in a brand that you can't buy anywhere else, that's where the exciting opportunities lie. So if you're a merchant that is trying to get your head around how to make more money, if you're a brand that's trying to make more money out of this, those experiences are definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that links us nicely into the segue of social commerce, because that's where probably I get this serendipity stuff, where I have purchased something that was like, oh yeah, that looks really exciting from somebody else. So social commerce, what's been happening in that space in the last 12 months to 2 years, and what learnings can we take from that?
Yeah, so it's definitely growing. Frustratingly, not as much data as I would like to tell us how quickly it's growing and where it's growing fastest and all that kind of stuff. So there are a few data points in our report that will be useful for folks that are going in there. I think the key bit is when you look at motivations for going online, and especially motivations for using social media, it's very clear. So GWI, one of our key data partners, they do a study every quarter. So huge numbers of people, thousands of people right the way around the world that they interview every quarter to find out what they're doing. And one of the bits of growth in there is people going onto social media specifically to look for inspiration, to look for products and services to buy, and then the sort of the bits around that, so learning and researching and all that kind of stuff. More than 3/4 of us are now going onto social media to actively research brands that we're thinking of buying. Now that's social networks, but a lot of other stuff like question and answer sites like Quora, messenger apps, all that kind of stuff. So when I say social media, I mean it in a broader sense in there. So that's growing fast, and I think any brand that isn't already actively making sense of that is in danger of missing out on an opportunity. I'm not going to say they're going to die. That's ridiculous. And all these people saying, if you're not doing this, you're a dead brand. It's daft. But you're missing out on a valuable opportunity, especially earlier in that journey. Like coming back to this theme again and again today, that the journey is so much more important than the final mile. And I think a lot of the conversation around third-party cookies recently has been driven by performance-driven brands. So a lot of these online merchants that are doing that retargeting. So you came to my website, you look at a pair of sneakers or trainers, depending on where you're from in the world, and that particular item of footwear will follow you around the internet for the next 6 weeks. That has suddenly got hugely expensive because of the changes in Apple's privacy policies, the death of third-party cookies, all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden that model is no longer as efficient as it was. And in many cases, it's no longer actually viable. And so all of a sudden, that moving things further back into the purchase cycle has become critical, whether it's classical brand advertising or if it's just making sure that you're present throughout the journey so that people don't forget about you or you're reminded at the right moment. That, to my mind, that's social shopping. So social commerce, I think, for a lot of people is there's a buy button. Phone reminding me to exercise. There's a buy button on Instagram, that is a very important opportunity. There's a buy button on Facebook increasingly. You've got brand platforms like Shopify that are doing an amazing job of bringing these things into the social platforms that we use every day. Those are hugely valuable opportunities for brands, but they're one part of the social shopping experience. And I think the other bits are equally exciting. So how do you take the conversations that you telling your mum about the leggings, for example, that could just as easily have happened if you'd posted it to your Instagram and your friends had gone, I really like those, I want them too. That in my mind is just as much social shopping as a buy button.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very difficult to give generic advice on this one, but the data clearly shows that it's growing. So have a chat with your friendly marketing support agency and services and all that kind of stuff to learn about what these trends are in your local market and what you can do, whether you're a massive brand or a small brand. The opportunities are there and they're growing. The data supports that. Now is the time to get involved so that you can tap in to that growing opportunity.
And I think just to round that off and using those leggings as an example, where do you think I found out about what leggings to purchase, Simon? Have a guess.
Is it Instagram?
No.
Social media?
Yes.
Okay, go on, tell me. Otherwise, I'll just embarrass myself with my boomer reference points.
It was a Facebook group. It was a Facebook group from actually a brand. So actually a brand had created a Facebook group, and it was a Facebook group that said, if you've got any questions about outdoor clothing, adventures, then they're almost like the facilitators. Now that's pretty rare. But actually, so I posted on there and I said, I want to buy leggings. I don't like walking trousers, and lots of females answered. And I was like, right, okay. Well, I then reviewed them, went, those ones look really good. I'm going to buy those. So actually, it was social commerce that sort of drove it inadvertently. Is that measurable?
Yeah.
Not really. But through social listening and either facilitating those groups or listening in those groups, if they are there, subject to what you're talking about, Facebook has a number of groups, dogs and children and motorhomes, all ones that I'm members of, but like say Instagram and lots of other, TikTok, etc. They are driving influence, but it's not measurable. And I think linked to your point earlier of you can't measure that, but you need to be in that space and you need to make sure that you're being talked about, but other people are talking about you. And that's then linked to the advocacy part, which I talked about earlier. That's so important. But brands don't really focus on that. They're trying to get that person to buy again. But actually, that person is your free marketeer if you can get them to be a total brand fan and have a great product, which obviously you need to have a good product for that, and all those little spindly bits in between. Which is hard to measure, which I think when people are trying to be efficient, it's not a measurable thing, but it's so important for two of the examples we've given today.
Yeah, and I think measuring at scale is always a tough one because people want these magic metrics that apply to everything. But let's take that Facebook group as an example, because I suspect that quite a few people listening and watching today are going to have a similar sort of experience. So let's take that Facebook group. You had people giving you advice. So you asked a question and somebody's coming and going, oh, brand X, I absolutely love what they're doing. Yeah. You should totally go and buy that. A lot of brands miss that as a clear opportunity to give value on both sides. So another one of my passions is spending stupid amounts of money on video kit. So as you can see, I spend silly amounts. Sorry for the podcast listeners, but the folks on YouTube will see that I've got a lot of kit in this room. And I love advocating to people. At the moment, my choice is if I want to make money out of advocating, I've got to go through quite a lot of hard work to get all of the Amazon affiliate stuff set up and then referenced through. I have gone through that, and admittedly, I try and make money from it, but God, it's hard work. What I really love, and what I don't see really many brands doing that they should be doing a lot more of, is saying, here is a discount code for you to give 5 friends. It's only going to work 5 times, but if you want to advocate for us, here's 10% off for you to give to your friends. By the way, if you want to sneakily use it yourself, by all means, go ahead. But that, those codes are trackable, so you can see whether the advocacy piece is working for you. But what it really taps into is our love of sharing good things with our family. So you sharing the leggings with your mum, if you then went, oh, and I've got a discount code if you want it. You get the benefit of feeling like you've given them value. They go, ooh, I've got a discount, that's brilliant. And best of all, the brand not only gets the sale, but gets the insight. So it's not about finding your most influential customers. That's a side benefit. But it's providing that understanding of how this word of mouth stuff, and like I said, word of mouth, the third most popular, I don't know what the correct word is, the third biggest source of brand discovery across all different channels. So I think don't try and make your measurement all about magic metrics that it's one ring to rule them all. You're not going to get that in most situations, and if you do, it ends up becoming bastardized because it is so omnipotent as a metric. Look for the little bits that you can measure in different places. Admittedly, you're going to need resource to do this kind of stuff. I understand not every brand has that luxury, but if you feel like you don't understand what's happening until the last mile conversion, these are some of the little bits that you can do to learn further back in the journey what's happening.
Yeah,
so it's quite a long statement, but
yeah. But no, I mean, super useful. And, just using those leggings example, never knew my leggings were going to be such a discussion of but actually, if they'd have given me a discount code, I would have obviously given it to my mum, used it myself, and then I probably wouldn't have sent them back, would I? Because if I'd have had a bit of a discount, obviously it would have been a bit more of a deal. And I probably thought, oh, £10 difference, maybe no, I should stay loyal to them. But actually, I purchased from them recommendations. But how many people, and there's lots of people that are members of groups and never say anything, but do actions off that. So how many other females saw that conversation and then purchased off the back of that anyway? And again, if they had a purchase discount code, it's almost self-fulfilling. But absolutely, it takes a resource, but not a huge amount of resource. And I think many brands are looking for this like utopia, like magic moment, this thing that they're not doing at the moment that is really technical. And actually, it isn't. It's about really putting the consumer shoes on, which I always advocate, and thinking about, the leggings example or the chocolate example or the song example, and thinking about, looking in the ecosystem online and offline of how your consumers or how your end users are going about their day-to-day and making decisions.
Yeah. Reminds me, one of the points when you were talking earlier about your skincare brand, saying you want to go in and be able to touch it. One of the things I found quite surprising is I have not seen, admittedly this is not a category I spend a lot of my time in, but I have not seen a lot of brands doing sign up and get a sample. I don't know whether that's because it's logistically hard work, whether it's open to abuse, but it feels to me like, especially for products that you need to at least touch and feel once, offering a sample in return for giving them some data about you not only gives you, first of all, the opportunity to build that database of first-party data, but also make sure that people that are going to buy online have had a chance to try it out first.
Yeah.
It feels like that should be part of the Amazon ecosystem already. You should, on Amazon, have the click here to get your free sample. You can only get it once. Don't take the piss and try and get 100 of them and never buy the product. But that, it feels like, samples used to be a big thing. You go to... When I do buy skincare products, I buy them from Kiehl's because I'm a sucker for expensive things that I don't need to spend huge amounts of money on, but I still do. But every time I go to Kiehl's in a physical store, I will walk away with probably about 20 samples of other products, right? And I think it's brilliant. It's one of the reasons I like going back to the store is they are really good at identifying other stuff that I may end up buying. I've been buying there for like 10 years and they still surprise me. So that in an online world feels like it is a big gap. Why are more brands not doing that? I suspect it may be because of logistics, but now that third-party cookies are dying, because the opportunity to build first-party data is so important now, it actually isn't that expensive compared to doing research or having to pay for third-party data anymore. There's my big tip. Go out, send samples out in return for a little bit of data. Even if it's just somebody's name and address and rough age group, you've already got a good start there.
Yeah, some retailers do it. I know in the UK, Waitrose insist on it to get the reviews part of things going. One brand I know who does do it is Small. Not sure if you get Small in Singapore where you live, but they are an eco-friendly washing product. So, nice. Eco-friendly is like, is it going to be really good? Yes or no? Very clever. So I'd highly recommend go and have a look at Small. And actually, where did I hear about Small? My sports massage lady, because we were talking about eco. So again, offline influence, online, she tagged me on WhatsApp. Didn't do it for a little while. Then I was chatting to my mum. I was like, oh yeah, Small, because e-cover really doesn't work for our family. Doesn't smell very nice and just doesn't work. But it's the one in the main high street, stores and stuff. So then Small's like eco-friendly, subscription, try for free. So they're overcoming all of the barriers, and obviously their product is really good. The packaging is obviously kid resistant, so even though it's cardboard, the children can't open it. So they've overcome that big barrier, which many brands struggle with, and it works. And now I've got all of their products in my house, subscription model, so it's overcome the fact of having to buy it online where I can't get it. They've overcome all of the barriers. So but absolutely, skincare, touch it, feel it. And Kiehl's, when I was traveling the world, I would go to the tax-free, whatever you call it, section in the airport. Duty-free. And Kiehl's would always come over and go, oh, what are you looking for? And I've got little pots, which I had in my light bags perspective.
Yeah.
So very interesting. Right, I'm conscious of time, Simon. You are a very busy person, but full of lots of knowledge, including definitely require some chocolate after this session. But I just wanted to touch on voice activation and voice search,
Yes.
Because many of us have bits of kit that are voice activated. But are there any trends or insights you've seen there that's worth touching on today?
Yeah, so just the data behind why this is an important trend. So voice search, using a voice assistant to find information. Again, great data from GWI. Have to give them a shout for this one. So we're looking at, I can't remember off the top of my head suddenly, 3 in 10, is it roughly that? So let's call it a third broadly. A third of internet users of working age around the world are using voice assistants to find information every month already. But when you go to India and China, it's significantly higher than that. And that's interesting because those are the 2 biggest internet populations in the world. They're also, therefore, the biggest sort of commercial opportunities online. And because of the sheer numbers of people and the commercial elements of it, they are driving the potential for further investment and growth in that particular area. So already a big trend, but like you said, the devices that we are able to interact with through voice are expanding, growing through different sorts of ways. So at the moment, the number 1 device for voice searches is the mobile phone. It's not smart speakers like Amazon Alexa and stuff like that. The vast majority going through your smartphone, which is with you all the time. But increasingly, people have got these sort of in-ear things which they're going to be using, connected to your phone perhaps, but you may have a watch. Everything is going to change. I make these predictions based on other people's predictions, so I'm a little bit scared about making this prediction. But nonetheless, I have on good authority that a number of big tech brands will be launching smart spectacles in the next 12 to 18 months. So certainly by the end of next year, we should see the new version of what was previously Google Glass, which sort of didn't quite work because it was a bit ahead of its time and the tech wasn't quite right. In all honesty, they were clunky. And we've seen Facebook launch its Ray-Ban partnership where they were, they were capturing videos and whatever else, and Snapchat had those for a while. But these are going to be a lot more sort of search-oriented. So they're going to have, apparently, I'm led to believe, I'm making promises that I can't deliver here, but they're going to have augmented reality overview, so you're going to add things to what you see. You're going to have an interface that you speak to as much as anything else, and it's going to feed stuff back through audio as well. So I suspect once those do become a thing, you're going to see this big jump in the opportunities that are related to voice interfaces, because you don't necessarily need to be carrying around multiple devices. I think the wrist stuff that we had still in many cases needs to connect to the phone, but we're increasingly seeing Apple stepping away from that. You can now do a lot of stuff without having your phone nearby. Once we get spectacles that are able to connect via cellular networks and are being able then to give you this massive amount of information in your real world, that is going to really change. So not only for voice actually, but also for image recognition tools. So if you've ever used like Pinterest Lens and Google Lens and stuff like that, suddenly if you think about if you're in a supermarket and it can see what you're seeing and you say, can I get this cheaper elsewhere? And you're looking at it, it goes off it goes. The opportunities and the scary bits of that are massive for brands. So right, I'm very excited about it. Unfortunately, I don't have the tech to be able to talk about it authoritatively, but I feel like it's inevitable that this is coming. Mm-hmm. So those new interfaces are going to be what accelerates this. I've deviated you away from what you wanted to ask about voice search, but I thought I would lead with that as it's getting bigger, even if it's already big. So what did you want to ask?
Worth leading in that, because people, again, through the organizations I chat to, tap into voice, but I say, like, you need to get your solid foundations in place first. Don't go just for the voice stuff because it is quite early.
Yeah.
But I think there's $22 billion being spent on people purchasing voice through voice this year. I think they're the predictions. But it is,
wow.
It is a fascinating space, and it is coming on leaps and bounds. Google and Amazon are always ahead of the game. They have lots of failure things, and then they go back to the board and then come back. But that whole spectacle thing, I'm thinking, like, IKEA are very good at. You can take a picture. You can put your sofa and show where it is. Well, actually, if you can do that with the glasses, you don't need this clunky bit of kit here, do you? So.
Yeah, and I think what's magic about it, and I'm going to do exactly what you did and pick up my phone. The only thing that's wrong with this is that you have to divert. So in order to get value from it, I need to look at this and not that. So even when you're doing like a voice call, it's really difficult. Sorry, a video call. It's difficult to stare at the camera and look at the person at the same time. Whereas once we've got spectacles, all of a sudden it is integrated into what I see. It's a what the industry love to call a heads-up display, which I hate as a term. But basically, it's not diverting me from what I'm already trying to do. So in the workplace, you can see these being magical, especially in very sort of manual jobs. You can see this being hugely, hugely sort of revolutionary in terms of the opportunities that it opens up, instead of having to look over here and then do this and look over here and do this. Just for me, I am useless at doing home improvement and DIY, absolutely hopeless at it. If I could have the guidance of this is what you do while I'm looking at it, instead of that, what did it say? Oh, I need to rewind the video. You know, all these categories that you can imagine. So not just in terms of finding supermarket stuff on the shelf in front of me, but doing stuff around the home and telling me what I need to buy and all that kind of stuff. I'm so excited about it.
It's very exciting. Not just in e-commerce, think surgeons and highly qualified people, upskilling very quickly, and in remote places. Because see, we talked about Africa, and I don't think we've got time to talk about Africa today, but thinking about remote places, if they if some of those people can have glasses on, then is there someone that can guide them, or watching stuff and do it? Can we upskill people in remote places very quickly? I think absolutely exciting.
Remote medicine, so the combination of things that you need to do with your hands, so a combination of connected spectacles and haptic response gloves, so things that give you vibrations or whatever else, saying you've got the surgeon saying just a little bit, you can see, obviously not the most sophisticated keyhole surgeries, but for basic things that might need somebody who has specialist experience that can't fly to a place to do this, or in an emergency, the opportunities of that are so special. I think you look at education, you look at healthcare, those are two areas that are going to really, really benefit from new interfaces, and the power of 5G technology especially. So yeah, we've opened, we're already over an hour of talking today. We've opened up a whole can of worms by saying we could talk another week just about those two things. So I'll pause there, but as you might have noticed, I'm excited about this. So I talk a lot about today's data and our reports, but what I see coming through the opportunities of existing behaviors through new interfaces, that to me is, we're long overdue a new device. We've had the smartphone for a good 15 years now. We're long overdue an innovation, and I believe that it's going to be around that spectacle area, at least in the short term, before something equally exciting comes on after that.
And I think COVID could have actually, COVID is bloody awful, but I think actually COVID could have helped with that, because no one, I was doing the odd Zoom call. I wasn't doing very many FaceTimes. I would always ring somebody. Now everything's a FaceTime. So people are a lot more used to technology as part of their day-to-day life. So although COVID has been absolutely horrible, I think then migrating into the next set of tech actually might be less prohibitive than what it might have been before as well, which is, there's sometimes always positives out of awful situations, aren't there? And hopefully that's one of them.
Yeah, and I think as we get into the metaverses, there is no such thing as the one metaverse, and lots of them exist already. So if you're excited as a marketer about the metaverse, go and have a look at Fortnite, Roblox, Minecraft. These three things are already active, successful metaverses where money is being generated already. So if you're excited about what Mark Zuckerberg is talking about, keep watching that, but go and play with those already. But I think, as you said, we're now in this virtual world for work a lot of the time. So once we get into the metaverse, I can only see that accelerating further, where we're doing more and more of our day-to-day activities, especially in the workplace. I think socializing online is a bit weird still for a lot of people, but if you've got a more efficient way of doing work, by all means, let's bring that in right now. So yeah, I think I love that we talked about lots and lots of stuff in great detail for one or two bits, and then we got to the rest of the future in 5 minutes at the end. But lots of stuff to come, folks. Tune in next year's chat and we'll show you more.
Excellent. Wow. Well, you've blown my mind, Simon, with that last bit of stuff, which I wasn't aware of. And also nice to meet a fellow chocoholic along the way. So thank you so much for today, Simon. As always, it's been wonderful to chat to you. Maybe we should, if you have the time, make this more regular than a once a year when the data's rolled out. But I know you are super busy and I don't want to take any more of your precious time. But thank you, Simon. Where can people find out more about you?
So I think, especially for folks that are interested in the data stuff today, head over to...
Sorry, sorry, just do that bit again. I was having a coughing fit. Sorry, where can people find out more about you, Simon?
So for the folks that are interested in the data that we've talked about today, especially, the easiest place to start is datareportal.com. I'm assuming you'll be adding links into the descriptions on YouTube and the podcast as well. So rather than me try and say it, which is not easy, datareportal.com is where you want to head over. You'll find all of our reports for free, every country in the world, last decade's worth of data. If you want to nerd out with me on a personal basis, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Simon Kemp, obviously. And on Twitter, you'll find me as Eskimon.
Excellent. Thank you, Simon. It's been fantastic to talk to you today. Thank you all for joining us today on the podcast or YouTube. I'm sure your pencil is burning from all those notes you've just taken, but don't just take notes. Think about how you can take some of those actions away from today's session, because Simon has shared a huge amount. Thank you. We look forward to having you on our podcast or YouTube again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Lynsey. See you next time.